All right, now coverage of Anzac Day continues through the day. We are going to take you in a bit more than 10 minutes' time to that dawn service at Anzac Cove in Gallipoli. Before we get there, let's bring in the Independent Senator Rex Patrick, who joins me from the Semaphore RSL in Adelaide. Thank you for your time, Senator. You previously served, of course, as a submariner in the Royal and Australian Navy. What does Anzac Day mean to you?
Oh, look, this is a really important day. It's an important day for Australians to remember all those soldiers, airmen and sailors who fought for our freedom, fought for peace. It's really important that we spend today thinking about those people and appreciating the fact that we do live in the country that we do, a free country, able to go about our business doing what we want and to speak with freedom.
For many, hanging over today is security in our region, though. What did you make of the words of Defence Minister Peter Dutton, who says the only way you can preserve peace is to prepare for war?
Well, I think that is very true. However, unfortunately, if we look at what President Roosevelt once said about talking softly and carrying a big stick, the Prime Minister and Peter Dutton have got this the wrong way around. They're actually talking very loudly whilst carrying a twig. We have a whole range of defence capabilities that have been withdrawn from service or put on hold because they're not achieving the expected aims. Things like our MRH-90 helicopters, our Army Battle Management System, our Tiger helicopters, our Spartan aircraft, and then we have a whole bunch of defence projects that aren't set to deliver capabilities until next decade. So our future frigates, we won't see them operational until 2033, and our future submarines are unbelievably 2040. So we've got a really concerning situation developing in our region, and we are simply not prepared for it.
We seem to be changing at least the mindset of preparation. Perhaps the threat was a lot smaller several years ago, and China's attitude was different as well. We also had the defence budget that had been reduced under Labor. Is this just a case of having to turn around the ship a bit more slowly than would be ideal?
Well, there's a number of things that have gone wrong here. It's not just the fact that we need to make sure we've got good defence capability. We've had a failure of diplomacy with the Solomon Islands. How we've ended up with a situation where we may end up with a Chinese military base 2,000 miles from Australian shores in the Pacific Ocean is just a complete failure of diplomacy. We've cut our funding to the Solomons.
Is it careful not to go
by about 40...
too far ahead just on that? There's no talk of a military base now. Solomon Islands says there won't be one. And as to the security deal, all seemed to be
President
set in...
Xi stood up. President Xi stood up and said that the bases that they were building in the South China Sea wouldn't be militarised, and they were. Our Prime Minister has no ability...
land. There's a difference there, though, as well. Xi Jinping did that because he could. He doesn't have the final say in the Solomon Islands.
He doesn't, but there is likely to be personnel shifted across from China to the Solomons to be able to at first deal with visiting warships, visiting aircraft. That will then turn into some sort of permanent feature. This is a consistent modus operandi of the Chinese, starting with their Belt and Road strategy, moving out to these sorts of arrangements with sovereign nations. We should not in any way feel comfortable about what has happened. And,
well, I don't think we are. I'm just presenting the argument that it hasn't happened just yet. Let me ask you about then why this might have happened. Sogavare has generally been someone who hasn't been all that complimentary of Australia for quite a while now. And his big switch was in 2019 when he stopped recognising Taiwan. Wasn't that the most significant move right now rather than anything Australia's done?
Oh, look, we can look back to slightly before that when Honiara was intending to build an undersea cable using Huawei. That was turned around by Mr Nick Warner, the head of our intelligence services. That ended up with the Prime Minister being deposed, and I'm sure he remembers that. Things have not been travelling well there yet. We haven't had the right attitude towards the Solomons in terms of making sure that we had the proper aid there. We've left a big hole, and China has filled that hole.
On the prospect of further riots, possibly soon, and we had a story on that just a moment ago, but also maybe more unrest if elections are delayed next year, which Sogavare has said he intends on doing. What should Australia's attitude be to keeping the peace effectively for Prime Minister Sogavare?
Look, we don't want to see anyone overthrown by way of a coup or some sort of military or violent action. We need to make sure that we support their government. We have to turn around what it is that they're doing. We also have to look further afield. We've got to make sure places like Daru Island off Papua New Guinea, where the Chinese are investing in the fishing industry, the Timor-Leste with investments being made by the Chinese on the southern plateau. This is a problem that is not just limited to the Solomons, and we have to start stepping up in the Pacific and actually assisting our friends and making sure that they have no reason to turn to the Chinese.
The government's seized on the criticism from Labor because part of it's come from Richard Marles. Now, excerpts appeared in a book, which of course was public last year. It wasn't a secret, but some of the quotes in that are interesting, among other things saying that we shouldn't be so worried primarily around foreign military bases, that it's about development goals, and that's the sort of main game. Does that undermine some of Labor's criticism in your view?
Oh, look, I think we need to recognise that there's been a fine balance that was played out, not so much in the last couple of years, but prior to that, between our strong alliance and important alliance with the United States and the fact that China was our largest trading partner. People sort of tried to walk a tightrope there. I think now things have changed quite significantly, and we now have to go on the front foot. We now have to recognise that China is becoming far more aggressive in terms of its foreign policy, and I think the rhetoric then changes. So we have to be careful. I'm sure if we went back to times prior, we would find Liberal ministers also walking that fine line.
I guess it just depends on when that was. As I said, that book published last year. But look, we've got to leave it there. Senator Rex Patrick, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Tom.